Sir Keir Starmer this week made a series of policy statements which will undoubtedly endear him to former Labour voters in the so-called Red Wall. He pledged to cut taxes for working people when the economy stabilises. He rejected a Swiss-style trade deal with the EU and said this is no time for a Scottish independence referendum. And earlier this week, he told the Confederation of British Industry that Britain must end its economic dependence on cheap migrant labour. So I'm asking, can Labour win back the working class? Now joining me is Dr Philip Kiszely, who is a cultural historian and lecturer at the University of Leeds and also can be seen on New Culture Forum, and political commentator Matthew Stadlen. Can Keir Starmer win the working class? Let's start with you, Philip.
Well, I think it's the election is his to lose, I would say. I think that's probably the best way to look at it. I don't think he can win back the working class because I don't think they trust him. They certainly don't trust him on the economy. There's been a poll out over the last couple of weeks that says that, and they don't trust him on culture either. He's got this two-prong attack. One on the economy, all of the things that you've just said, but they don't trust him, but also on culture. But let's just bear in mind what he is. He is Mr. EU. He's the Remainer kid. And that's what people think of him as. And he's saying that the Labour Party is the party that's going to support women. Yet this is the person who can't identify what a woman is. He can't actually say that a woman is an adult human female. So I think a lot of this stuff, one, comes down to trust, okay? And no matter what he says, I don't think that people will support him. That's not to say that they trust the Conservative Party, because my God, they don't, and they shouldn't do. But I think other kind of factors will come into play. I think the smaller parties will have a much bigger role this time. I think particularly the SDP and Reclaim. Okay, but there's also the kind of wild card. I was looking at the Telegraph. I'm just looking now because I made a note earlier that almost a quarter of people would vote for a Nigel Farage-led party. So I think all eyes are on your colleague and what's he going to do, because I think that will make a massive difference. So, as I said at the beginning of this, it's his to lose.
Yeah.
And he probably will do.
I'm also waiting to see what my colleague will do. Matthew Stadlen, is this all rhetoric from Sir Keir Starmer, or will he actually win back the red seats?
Well, first of all, on your colleague, Sir Keir Starmer, who used to be a colleague of mine when we were both LBC presenters, this is a man who I think ran to be an MP himself for what? I think he did it 7 times.
You mean Nigel Farage?
8 times, Nigel Farage, exactly. And he didn't get elected as an MP. So he was an MEP. He's undoubtedly, in some ways, one of the most successful politicians. I do disagree with many of the things that come out of his mouth. He's a hugely successful politician. But he failed time and time and time again to become an MP, even when Brexit was a live issue, even in the build-up to the Brexit referendum of 2016. So that poll may have some substance. I'm not so sure. I don't think Nigel Farage will re-enter frontline politics. I'm sure he's comfortable enough in the GBNews studio. What I'll say about Keir Starmer is this. The British public want stability. They want to be able to afford their heating. They want to be able to afford their mortgages. They want to be able to afford food. That's what we all want. We want to be able to put food on our table. We don't want to have to choose between heating and eating. Whether you're working class, lower middle class, upper middle class, whatever you happen to be, that is at the heart of everyday life. The Conservatives have had 12 years at this, and we are in an almost unprecedented mess. An unprecedented mess in modern times anyway. Rishi Sunak has done something to steady the ship, and I'll give him that. And he's done that with Jeremy Hunt as Chancellor. And they will be a tougher egg to crack, I think, for Starmer than either Liz Truss or the populism of Boris Johnson, given how Boris Johnson's star fell in recent months, and you could say years as well. So it's not an easy challenge for Starmer, but I think he can do it. And I think he can do it for this reason. People are fed up of things not working. And yes, as I say, Sunak has done something to mend the bridge, but I don't think he's done enough. In terms of the EU point, yes, Starmer has some ground to make up, because undoubtedly some of those red wall seats fell to Boris Johnson, not just because of the toxicity of Jeremy Corbyn, and I think Corbyn was toxic, but because of the Brexit issue. And as our other guest says just now, it's absolutely true that Starmer was seen as Mr. EU. He's had to adapt, And I think he's adapted both in ridding the party of the toxicity of the Corbynites, ridding the party of the spectre of anti-Semitism, but he's also adapted on migration. And I hope we can believe him that he is committed to upskilling people who already live here. Where I might diverge from him is that he needs to be bolder in making the case that for our economy to function, as we were talking about earlier on your show, Calvin, for the economy to function, we do in the short term at least need people coming from abroad. Otherwise, our NHS will continue to be on its knees, and our hospitality sector, amongst others, will struggle.
I would argue it's on its knees because we have so much immigration coming up. I'll come back to you in a minute, Philip, because I do want to ask Matthew on this while we're talking about the economy. I like the policies. I like the idea that Labour will cut taxes for working people. Sounds good to me. I like the idea that we must wean the economy off cheap immigration. Sounds good. But, first of all, do I believe them? No, probably not. But secondly, is this enough? Are economic issues enough? What about what Philip mentioned earlier, that the Labour Party can't seem to define what a woman is, never mind support women? The social issues matter, right?
I think they matter a little bit. I don't think they matter as much as media organisations such as GBNews, the Daily Mail, LBC, whatever it is. I don't think they matter as much as people running those organisations and presenting those organisations seem to think, or that Twitter, for example, seems to think. But look, if I were Keir Starmer and someone said, "Do you know what a woman is?" I'd be able to say, "Yes, I know what a woman is." And if someone said, "Well, can a woman have a penis?" I would say, "Well, no, women don't have penises, but trans women do have penises." And I back trans rights as far as they possibly can until they collide with women's rights in real ways. Okay. I think those real ways are very limited. So if I were Keir Starmer, I have a common sense approach to this. You've got women, you've got men, you've got trans women, you've got trans men. Let's be kind in our language to everybody. Let's be as inclusive as we can. And where there is a genuine clash of rights, let's try to untangle that, but without the transphobic language.
OK. And Philip, I want to ask you, is Keir Starmer now to the right of the Tories? It seems on these issues, cutting taxes for working people and weaning us off cheap immigration or cheap immigrant labour, these seem to be issues right of where the Tories are right now.
Yeah, but the Tories aren't conservative, and I think that's the major problem, and they've not been conservative for years, decades. I think just one or two things to come back to your other guest, and I agree with lots and lots of what he says. I don't think it's about adapting. I think it's equivocation, and I think there's a difference there. And he kept saying all the time, "If I were Keir Starmer," you're not Keir Starmer, and he isn't saying those things. So I think there's people do really care about culture in the Red Wall seats. They care about tradition, and they care actually about reality. And I think the easiest, the most simple reality check is asking the question, what is a woman? And if someone can't answer that, I think they're very, very concerned. It really isn't. I'm on the New Culture Forum every week, and we get tons and tons of questions about this, right? If you can't describe what a woman is, then you really can't advocate for women's rights. Okay, and that's what they're saying at the moment, and the two things really don't go together. They came out yesterday saying they are the party for women's rights, but they can't define what a woman is, so they are really not the party for women's rights. I would really disagree with the culture thing. I think culture is front and centre at the moment, and I think that's why the Labour Party are pushing it so hard.
Yeah, I would say the only reason we talk about cultural issues is because they're important to people. We don't talk about things that people don't necessarily care about. So, Matthew, is Starmer now too close to Blairism for many Labour supporters? In his attempt to attract the Red Wall back, is he going to lose the hard left that have been supporting the Labour Party?
I'm starting to sound like a Labour politician, aren't I? I'm starting to use the word look the whole time. No, listen. Tony Blair, I didn't agree with him on everything. I certainly didn't agree with him on the Iraq War, particularly in retrospect. But that guy was an election winner. He won Labour 3 elections in a row, along with some of the leaders from the 1930s or 1940s. Clem Attlee, for example, he's one of the titans of the Labour movement. So if Keir Starmer had anything like Tony Blair's success, then those on the left, most of those on the left, will be cheering to the rafters. Unfortunately, and I'm broadly speaking, I would describe myself as left of centre, not as left as Corbyn, didn't vote for Labour under Corbyn in 2017 or 19. But Starmer doesn't have the charisma of Tony Blair. Does that matter? Perhaps not. It may matter a little bit more up against Rishi Sunak, because Rishi Sunak, I think, although on immigration and the rhetoric and the language he's allowed his Home Secretary to use, Suella Braverman, and the fact that he reappointed her, that's very disappointing. He's still something of a grown-up in the room. I don't believe Liz Truss was a grown-up in the room. I don't believe that Boris Johnson was a grown-up in the room. And against that, the fact that Starmer didn't have charisma perhaps might have been in his favour. Against Sunak, it's going to be more difficult, because Sunak is a serious politician in many ways. Do I think he can win back the working class vote? First of all, he's absolutely right. We talked about the immigration stuff. He's absolutely right to say that when the economy allows, if it ever does, he's going to make sure he cuts taxes for working people, because you can see that working people feel like they've got a really bad deal at the moment. Don't forget, by the way, a lot of working people are on benefits as well, and it's right that benefits went up with inflation. But people are working incredibly hard in this country, and they're getting to see very little reward for it. So Starmer is right to target that. On the culture thing, come up with simple, sensible, common-sense answers. Don't muck about. You do have to win that battle as best you can, but you don't have to win it in a race to the bottom. You don't have to win it by using nasty language. And it's obvious to me that Starmer is not quite nailing this, but it's not obvious to me, as Philip says, that he's not a supporter of women's rights. Of course he is. It's just a knotty issue, and he has to get the right language when it comes to the trans debate.
Isn't that the problem, though, Philip, that we obsess over the language, or the left obsesses over the language, and spends all day talking about the language, never gets to the actual issue at hand, and actually calls a lot of things hate or nasty, as Matthew just did, what might not be hateful or nasty. It might actually just be common sense to some people. And especially if we're talking about the trans debate, to a lot of people in this country, they will say, well, there are men and there are women, and that is it. So how do you address these issues with what Matthew calls common sense if we don't all agree with what that is?
I think the language thing is really incredibly important, and we talk about this all the time, don't we? There's a sense that we say certain things, but we actually mean something else. And if we're saying trans women are women, and that's the centre of the debate, I don't think that should be the centre of the debate. I think women's safety should be the centre of the debate. You know, what happens when women-only spaces don't become women-only spaces anymore? So I don't think any of it actually is about hate or hate speech. And I think if people bring the word hate into a conversation like this, then I don't think they're acting honestly.
Some people do hate, Philip. That's the point. Some people, unfortunately, are using this sort of new incarnation of trans issues and the trans debate to propagate old-fashioned transphobia. And unfortunately, that's true.
That's a bad faith assumption, because most people are not coming to this conversation with hate.
There are plenty of people who do come to the conversation. Speak on behalf of yourself. Plenty of people who come to the conversation with hate. We just have to be sensible about this.
All right, thank you. Well, I think we'll leave it there.